I think we should get started. Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much. I am going to start sharing my screen. We are going to kick things off today. Good morning again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for UTO's first ever Responsible Innovation Workshop. We are so happy that you chose to spend 90 minutes of your day with us, and we cannot wait to get started. We have a great agenda for you today. We will have a warm welcome from Chris Richardson, who is our Deputy CIO of Development, Mobility, and Smart Cities. Then we will get into a little bit of a history of responsible innovation, a great example of why responsible innovation is important, and then we'll get into defining the charter with Chris Deaton and Barnaby Wasson. Then we will shuffle over to breakout rooms where we will collaborate together for about 25 minutes. And upon returning back to the main space, we will do quick 3-minute wrap-ups from each of the sections of the charter, and then we will conclude our day. And with that, I am so excited to throw it over to Chris Richardson to kick us off.
Hey, thanks, Karina. And I guess I should add, my title is actually Product Ownership and Leadership Development. We did switch things over in the UTO 2.1. But I do want to say before I kind of come back to responsible innovation, how thankful I am for Karina. Our Responsible Innovation Guild, we've been working for some time since the goals were set. And when we knew we wanted to go and get this workshop organized, Karina just ran with it, and it's amazing. We've got a number of volunteers that'll be working with you all today. I just want to thank the Guild, and thank Karina, and thank the volunteers. I think you're going to be hopefully pleasantly surprised how much you'll get from what we've put together here. Responsible innovation, when it showed up on the goals, and for me, and seeing my name tied to it, frankly, I was a little surprised. But then when I start to think about what I've learned about responsible innovation, because I was not an expert, I don't think any of us were, that it is very product oriented. If you think about the realm that we're going to go into of creating our own products, we need to really be thinking intentionally about the potential impact. And so if you can move to the next slide, as we start to form and we've started to produce some things in preparation for this workshop, we wanted to identify some goals for you all as you attend this and what we're looking for. So you learn about what our Responsible Innovation Charter is, if you haven't seen that already, and we're hoping that you'll find a way to make that yours. How can it guide you in what you do for design, development, implementation, and just supporting overall efforts that we do in anything for the university, especially with our products and productization. You also find that any way that we can do stakeholder-driven work and really considering how we scale. I mean, Dr. Crow has amazing ambitions. Lev has really taken what's possible to the next level, and so scale is really critical. And with scale, we can get ourselves in trouble if we're not looking at the holistic lens. So the scale, complexity, risk. What can we do to really minimize issues as we're going fast? With those stakeholders, bring them together to help us draft how we can incorporate these principles into our work. Use the charter to ground yourself. So again, I guess we're trying to say, think about how you can apply this to your day-to-day. And then finally, bringing forward the focus, scope, and steps needed to ultimately cultivate a responsible innovation mindset into the initiatives you're all working on. That's really what we're trying to do, whether it's through our charter or our core values. So keep those 4 goals and takeaways in mind as you kind of process what we bring forward in this workshop. And again, one thing we'll have to figure out to do is get some feedback. Maybe we'll create some sort of survey of how your experience was in this so that we can make this better for the next time. So please consider that as well. So I just think that you all came and joined. And again, thanks to the team that organized this. I think it's going to be really, really special to see how this all comes together today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And yes, we will be doing a survey at the end. All right. Hold on. I'm having a hard time. Here we go. Let's lead with the why. Barnaby and Chris, take it away.
Okay, leading with a why. So we're here because of responsible innovation and what it can do for us. But understanding the broader framework of knowledge and innovation that is not only just informing our internal practices within the University Technology Office, but it is leading the broader transformation of ASU, further empowers us, enriches us. It will enable for us to have a subtlety of understanding within this new practice of this framework of practice. And it has 30 years of theoretical, academic, practical, iterative, public feedback, and it's grown from its initial concept. It was back in the mid 90s, Michael Gibbons talked about how there was this kind of dedication to raw discovery, or there was a dedication to this raw pursuit of technical development, but not necessarily an awareness as to how it impacted society, how those that were unintended or unintentional outcomes of that discovery and development were impacted. And then how were the people that were vested in participating in that process both aware of what they were doing and encouraged, challenged to develop the sense of responsibility, hence the name responsible. But it was that really drove this again, this pushback into what President Crow refers to is the leading theoretical innovation framework that's driving the fifth wave transformation of ASU, a move from a mode 1, which is again that traditional approach, to a mode 2, which is this engaged, iterative, responsible, reflective, reactive, inclusive, participatory type of approach to knowledge and technology development. It's not an easy thing, but if it wasn't easy, we wouldn't be doing it here. So that's kind of where it started. It really then started becoming much more crystallized by Rene von Schomburg, because he was then, if this was this idea of a let's start engaging, it started then really developing a much more recognized voice within, again, scientific research and technology development that took us into the space that in a broader report to the European Union, Rene talked about the sense of trying to make sure that we had an open iterative process where society and the creators became mutually responsible to each other, that they were able to recognize the public interest, what's that value, what's that impact, and that they were sustainable in the innovation process and in the expression of marketable products. So again, this broader response to saying, what do we do? How do we ensure that the kind of future that we want to see is realized through the innovations we deliver? And that space then really started then coming and crystallizing, and Jack Stilgoe's response to that, which was, okay, so if this is more of the scientific focus, then how does that move into more of this technology development, this innovation, the creation of the new? And that was very much crystallized in the way that he talked about that ensuring the future is realized by a holistic stewardship over the discovery and development of the new in the present. So that, again, is got us to this point where we're now still improving and in ideating and in changing that larger concept. And if there are core features of what that looks like, it's that understanding of anticipation, inclusion, reflexivity, and responsiveness, the asking why, making sure that you have people from the beginning throughout the process, that we are purposeful, that we think about not only what is our motivations and what are we trying to do, but what are the outcomes of that, both intended and unintended? Do we have the right audiences? And if we don't, have we, through the unintended, realized there are also unspoken, there are empty chairs that we need to fill, that we need to honor and recognize? And then how do we move beyond just saying, well, we had a focus group, but we had a larger share and everyone got our white paper? It is meant to be this iterative conversation where the public, where all of our stakeholders, as large as that concept wants to be, are vested in this process, vested in a deep, reflective, public decision-making process that empowers everyone to recognize their responsibility and their role in the outcomes of what is developed. and very much to the UTO's direction and embrace of this broader ASU transformation as our key priority for this fiscal year. Fourth priority is responsible innovation. It's that embracing within the UTO to ensure that we've got an intentional commitment to the embedded values and the stakeholder inclusion of the work product of the UTO, reflecting our positive core, reflecting our broader commitment to the ASU Charter. That is what's motivating this broader effort. And I'll be honest, there's not a lot of groups in higher ed, in development, in technology that are doing this. But again, if it's not difficult, is it really worth doing? So we are finding ourselves in this space that we're today coming together to say, if these are the historical frameworks and constructs of innovation and knowledge development, what do they mean to us? How do we practice them? How do we apply them? How do we live to those ideals to get to us, to help enable and transform the university to where it's very much heading towards?
Thank you, Barnaby. What a great definition. It's a beautiful job. All right,
Hey everyone.
Christy.
Hi everyone. How are you today? So I'll give you the other perspective of the history background that Barnaby just gave you. I kind of feel like this is the culmination of 30-year career in IT for me, and I'm really excited about where we've gotten to. I started out in America Online, and we used to do green, yellow, and red statuses of priority projects and how we do it. And then we started fast tracking projects. And then we started super fast tracking projects. And then we started critically super fast tracking projects. You got to the point there was no such thing as a green or yellow anymore. There was always red, double red, triple red, and quadruple red. And at that point in time, as IT was trying to get their foothold as an internet and a social media type network going on, our priority was being first to the market. We didn't care if it worked. We really didn't care if we were doing the right thing. We just wanted to be first to market. And we made some mistakes. Because of that, we actually developed a new department at America Online at the time called the Knowledge Engineering Group. And that Knowledge Engineering Group encompassed the quality assurance team at that time, the usability and UX team. We didn't really call them all that at that time, but it was a group of people put together to make sure, one, that our products worked, and two, make sure that we were asking all the right questions. Should we be doing this? Why are we doing this? And are we reaching the goals we want to reach for not only the company we were working for, but the customers that we're trying to serve? And who was it that we were trying to serve? I struggled quite a bit back then because I didn't feel like many of the things we were doing were for the right reasons, and it made it very difficult. And then I came to ASU about 10 years later, about 15 years later, I guess. And I saw a lot of the same issues. My passion for student advocacy has gotten me in trouble a few times over the years, for those of you that have worked with me on a number of projects. And I feel like it was kind of a detriment at times. And I also felt like that the points that I was trying to get across and the questions that I wanted to ask were really not met with very receptive ears at the time. But I pushed on. I knew that there were people in UTO that I had talked to that felt very much the same way I did about these things. And eventually I kind of felt like we could all get there together. And those of you probably know, I also dabble in the academic side of the university quite a bit. I've spent a lot of time in the School of Future of Innovation. Dave Gustin was heading that up last year. And when Chris was doing the Responsible Innovation, discussion group the first time and invited Dave to come talk about it, Dave was one of the original authors of some of the papers of responsible innovation of the last 15 years, 20 years. I was really excited and I was hopeful. I just barely. I've seen his lip service before. It wasn't my first rodeo, but I was hoping we're bringing Dave in. We're going to have this conversation. We met, and I really think, and I'm sure Chris can concur, this became a whole lot bigger than Chris, meaning Richardson, intended originally. We started having a second, I think a third meeting at that point. We started developing a charter. We determined whether we were a work stream or a guild or whatnot. And we started evaluating what we were going to do next. And the fact that this was taking the steam was really kind of inspirational for me. But again, I was hesitant. At the same time, UTO 2.1 is happening, and we have this big mantra going on about, take control of what you're doing, take ownership, keep going forward until someone stops you. And at the same time, I get this new project. So the new project is Sync Showcase. It's available at syncshowcase.asu.edu. If you don't know, it is a live streaming service where we are live streaming classes that are viewable on ASU Zoom Sync system. So this was enabling outsiders to come in and watch students engage with the professors in class. A lot of alarms started going off in my head that first meeting. We've got FERPA issues to discuss. We've got confidentiality just in general. We're trying to engage students in a well-rounded educational environment that gets them to engage with the professors, with their classmates, and enhance their learning environment. And we're trying to give the learners the ability to help increase in their learning. And now we're going to let a bunch of strangers come in and watch them. So for me, that was a real big sticking point, and I wasn't sure how to handle it due to the past situations that I dealt with that I didn't feel had gone as effectively as I would have liked. However, in that first meeting, one of the people in our first discussion made a comment that they felt this was a little bit disingenuous to the students. We're already in the semester, it's already starting, now we're going to throw this out there. And I was given permission to keep asking and exploring those questions and making sure that we were asking all the right ones. So it was a great moment for me. At that time, if 2.1's mantra wasn't enough, I now had direct permission to go out and start asking these questions. So what did I do next? So I created user stories around the personas that we knew were going to be part of this new Sync Showcase. Administration, professors, the TAs that were going to help, the internal students, the external viewers that are going to be watching, and I gave them all the use cases, right? Take the emotion out of this. Let's look at what the basic issues of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and what objectives we want to make along the way. I even made one of them, the stakeholder, one of the use cases I put on there was that I wanted to follow the principles of responsible innovation in this project. And I just left it there. And I kept handing this information back to Kyle, who was the person stakeholding this for me, basically, through the provost office. And at the same time, there was a side conversation that went on. I think it was just Michelle and Ruby, Allison, and Kyle at the time. And Ruby and Allison had many of the same questions that I had. What are we doing for the student? Are we talking to the student? Are we making sure they can be engaged? Are we giving them the FERPA privacy that they've asked for, if they've asked for it? I believe it was about 25 or 28 questions of the laundry list that they came up with, so at least a couple of dozen that they fired back at Kyle. It went unanswered. So I started asking Kyle about these questions and what we were going to do about them. And the answer I continually got back was that the provost office is going to manage that and going to handle it. I wasn't okay with that answer. I wanted to know what that looked like. And I told Kyle that. I said that, that's great. And I really appreciate the fact they're taking that on. However, from a UTO perspective and responsible innovation perspective, we need to know what that looks like so that we can document it and say, what are we doing? So we had some discussions and we put some people in charge of talking to students. We talked to some of the professors. We made a laundry list of questions up for the professors to ask their students. We made sure that all the students were giving consent to be a part of this new project that we were doing and that they were okay with being in the class. And we had the discussion about responsible innovation that Kyle had never heard of before. So I brought up the charter and I showed him the charter that we had been established. And I asked him the question in the charter, which we'll talk about here shortly. Which of these questions were things that we should not consider? Which of these were less important than others? And as you can see by the way we designed the charter, all of those are equally important. We need to ask all of those questions. And I am assuredly know that Kyle felt the same way. And he agreed with that. So what really came out of a situation that possibly could have gone poorly, I was very passionate and wanted to make sure that we were getting the voices heard. And Kyle was very passionate in making sure we made the dates and got done what the provost and the president's office was asking us to do. What might have been a stalemate in the past was not. And the reason it was not is because I had a charter. And I had a charter that I could show them. And I had a tool that I could say, we've had discussions about this. Here's the history of this. Here's what this looks like in action. Here's who's involved in this, is signed off on this. And I'd like to have this discussion. And he agreed. At this point, we haven't done any additional work on Sync Showcase due to many other issues, but we know that the backlog being developed for Sync Showcase, for what we will be doing in the upcoming months, is taking a lot of the principles of responsible innovation and putting them into the user stories to make sure we're addressing them as we continue to do future development. I think that's kind of what we were hoping for, and to have those conversations and making sure that when we get to that point and others can reuse the material that we have started to develop is going to be the next step that we're going to take from there. I think the biggest takeaway for me was that this is the process we have been talking about, that we have been fiddling with in different flavors and different aspects of for many years, and across the university and across other corporations. And we've gotten to the point that now we can actually make some action and look at this from a long-term goal setting. It's not what we're taking to market next week to be #1 in innovation. It's what's going to last. And if we're in the long game, which I think we just hit 131 years as a university last week, I'm pretty sure we're in the long game. So thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We are so lucky to have your voice and your drive in our institution. So sorry, I did not flip the script, but
that's okay. There was really the use cases are on there. The user stories are just on there to kind of give the example. And when it came down to one of the things that brought up taking the 25 or 28 questions that Allison or Ruby asked, we were really able to distill that back down into kind of those first 3 things as a student I want. Those are the priorities to making sure that we were addressing. One thing I want to add really quickly, because it's been a great experience. I've witnessed a number of the classes. I know a number of us in UTO have done so and streamed in and watched. There's been a number of really good discussions going on. One of them in particular, I believe it's an English class. The project for the semester is to do observations and to go out and do observations and come back and report on them, kind of a participant observation sort of thing, and for the writing assignment. So the first class, they talked about how they were being observed. It became a very meta discussion about the fact that they're out doing observations, talking about how they're going to do observations. At the same time, UTO and others are possibly viewing them at the same time. So it really opened up an opportunity for a very lively conversation with the students and to explore what we're doing. So.
How cool. Thank you so much for sharing your example and your story. All right, Barnaby, back to you.
Okay. Well, Chris and I are going to take some time and go through the 5 large core areas of this charter. And again, for those of you who are following Chris's link, you'll see that within the chat. You'll be able to see directly the full charter. So we're going to take a chance to go through that. Once we've done that, we will break into groups to then reflect, react, and collaborate ways that we can bring this into our own practices. That'll be the first. You'll pick a core area when we break out into groups. Things, pick an area that you find most interesting or that you'd like to see further developed or further explored. You'll have a facilitator within each of those 5 groups that's going to guide the conversation, not dominate the conversation. It really is participatory. Your voice, your engagement, your reaction to it will then be reflected. And so that is a critical component of the model that we're trying to do. We're trying to walk the talk. So join in that, looking at ways that that core area applies. And then we'll have a whole group report out. Now, we've all sat through report outs. In the spaces that you'll be interacting, we will be using Jamf that will allow for direct engagement between you and the facilitator, within you and everyone else in that same room. We encourage you to use the last slide and create a notes page that you can then add in things that are key takeaways for you, that are action items that you're like, oh, they said, I'm going to hold them to it. Hold us to it. This is part of this participatory, reactive, reflective component. We're going to draw all of those and then ensure that they're both acknowledged and, more importantly, that they're followed through. So that's what we're hoping for you to have. Take notes, engage, find areas that, again, you feel like this really speaks to you, and there should be enough time that if you're like worked in an area, you've contributed, you've walked away going like, oh, that I'm good there, pick another room. But regardless, we're so very glad that you're here this morning and look forward to your reflection and your reactions, and more importantly, your ongoing engagement to see this realized. Chris, the first major core area of responsible innovation is this anticipatory frame mindset. And that's hard to remember. It's easier to say lead with a why.
I would agree. I think that's really the big takeaway from this is just making sure we're always asking why we're doing something. What is the purpose, not only for ourselves, but for those that we serve? Are we really serving them in the way that we wish to and that they would like us to?
Yes. And how does this tie into both who you see yourself within the community, within the university? How do you ensure that you're able to capture that why, that you explore it? Again, some of this is trying to ensure that you have a clear understanding of what the outcome, the purpose is, but then through reflection to try to uncover what's unintentional, what was the unexplained that, well, we developed this, it should have worked just fine, and yeah, we have all this blowout. So that's part of this effort, is to try to ensure that you're constantly asking why, not just at the beginning, but throughout. And as you're completing, delivering something, you're also still asking why, because there may be a further iteration, there may be a further revision, there may be a further option, or frankly, you may look at this and say, I don't think the world's ready for it, or we're not ready for it, and maybe we should stop and pause to ask, maybe invite others to then say, how do we move this forward? That is the built-in process.
Yeah, I think the why enables us to take that opportunity to stop what we're doing and maybe not move forward. Too often we have a goal set in mind that we just keep marching towards it. But if we take that reflective moment, maybe we'll find a better direction.
Yeah, it's incredibly empowering, which is even further empowered by our next core area, which is being human-centric, making sure that you've got, you're as inclusive as you possibly can. Who are your stakeholders? Well, I've got, my product owner, my product sponsor, I've got my SMEs, I've got my core developers, I might have my QA and my release people. I have the person who is funding this, be that internal to UTO or some other unit, or a grant that's come through, a gift. I'm square. Those are my stakeholders. Partially. We still have others, both within that space, those that may be intended users and intended audience, but through that reflection of the why, who are the others that also need to be? That's that empty chair that we talk about, to look and to ensure that you've got everyone there and that you recognize we're missing this group, and we need to ensure that we elevate them, we invite them, and reflect their voice, reflect their whys back into the conversation. That's a hard one, because even if you say, well, I've got open doors, it is a challenge to the public, your stakeholders, to say, please join us. And they'll look at you initially and go like, yeah, no, I've got better things to do. Once they start realizing what they can do with their voice and what their involvement and participation means, it usually changes. But there's that effort of trying to extend that out. Chris?
Yeah, I think that using the Sync Showcase as an example, one of the things that really came out of this is as you said, you have an open door and that's great, but you got to get people to come in. And how does that open door look? So one of the things that came out of this, I think I can say this, is we opened up the social logins. So we actually enabled it so you could log in with SSO, you could log in with Facebook, you could log in with Apple, and I feel like there's another one.
Google.
And that was the first time that we'd ever done that. So intentionally designing for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, we really did open the doors, and we opened the doors so the hoops that they had to jump through were very low. It was a really simple process because most people already have one of those accounts, right? So I think that was a very good direction that we took, and hopefully we'll be using that widget on future projects.
And as a sidebar, back to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, being able to carry out, in essence, a small little audit, a little proctoring of what's occurring, listening in for those who have never crossed the threshold of a formal higher education campus to be able to say, well, I'm interested what that sounds like, what that looks like, and see themselves in that space. ASU is very diverse and very rich and vibrant, and to participate in those conversations, again, empowers you to say, oh, I get it. I am meant to be included. So that was, Chris, my reaction back again to your Sync showcase. Let's move to the third core area. So if we've got all those larger voices, if we're asking the whys, is ensuring that we're reflecting, that we have a moment. Look, there's always a moment in our daily lives that shooting from the hip is the direction we need to be going for. But a lot of times, the best thing we can do, and we actually talk about this practice of Soshin, is having a beginner's mindset of looking at a problem that's in front of us, ensuring that we're reflective, that we're deliberate, that we're very conscious about what it is that we're doing. And that effort of ensuring that we've got everyone who's around, everyone who's participating, looking and very much teasing out that challenge, teaching out what that problem may be, that puzzle, is what then provides greater depth and, more importantly, greater richness and opportunity for the whole process, but the outcomes itself. Chris?
I think I just want to add that looking again at Sync Showcase, and it's a practice that I've been doing at ASU since I've been here the last 10 years, is seeking out those other voices that aren't normally asked. I have a number of professors and student friends that I send things I'm working on occasionally and go, hey, what do you think? I would say some of the things that I have on the user story for backlog are from people that aren't in UTO and are just other employees outside of our department in the university or students. And the example that I gave, I mean, we got to where we were because it was a conversation with Allison and Ruby and Michelle and Kyle. I mean, it was definitely a collective voices and getting that wisdom brought in.
I've always found the most empowering moment in agile development, it is in the celebrations where you're now delivering what you had said that you were going to do within that sprint. And it's in the accountability that's occurring in that. It's in the iterative feedback that's happening in for everyone who's involved in that celebration, that closing of a sprint, the starting of a next. But it's also in the recognition that that's a wonderful forum, and it happens quite often that you will then take feedback of those around, the stakeholders, and include them right into the backlog. And so there's that recognition that's saying, I hear you, and yes, it is now part of the broader effort and awareness. We'll groom on it, we'll report on it, and based
Uh-oh. Chris Deaton, are you still there?
I'm right here.
Okay. I was like, is it me?
No, we're good. Why don't you flip? We'll flip to the next slide. We'll go forward. We'll get Barnaby back up. Looking backwards and forwards. It's kind of much of the same thing, is making sure that why we're doing it, we know our history. So Barnum and I talked a little bit about not only the academic history of responsible innovation, but the in practice history of responsible innovation and quality, looking at it. And some of the products that I'm working on right now, we're already having these conversations. How will this be used 2 generations out? Are we making something that not only is scalable, but will not only be scalable, but still be usable? And I know many products in the past, that hasn't been the case. I mean, there's products that are retired all the time because they're no longer forward thinking. So making sure that we're looking at that in the beginning is super important. Being a catalyst for good and creating the ripple effect, and that kind of anticipate rather than react. That's good road mapping. We already do some of that, but making that more of a priority of where we're going to be in a couple of years. And the open source culture. This is already an ongoing conversation in UTO and UTO 2.1. And the collaboration and sharing of ideas, I think, is something we're already working really hard on. So I'd like to see that too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely a big proponent of learning from our past, catapulting into our future. Really utilizing those lessons learned from projects, huh?
yes,
Right.
and I'm back. I put another quarter in the meter, so we're good.
Barnaby, thank you. Welcome.
You're welcome. Sorry.
I wrapped up this one unless you have something else you want to add.
It is that again, Chris, I think we're good. Let's move on to the next.
All yours.
So this right here is very much that broader recognition that the ASU, the UTO, is driven by not only the charter, but within the UTO, we have this positive core, these relational, authentic, visionary, empowered. And living that positive core influences and should drive all of our actions. This core area of responsible innovation is the projection into that space of very much ensuring that you're empowering those that are leading this broader transformation of practice across the university for those accountable outcomes, but you're also looking at ways to ensure that you're bringing in and fostering the necessary space that people are able to authentically follow and engage with one another, that they see the UTO green fields of these envisioned futures and are contributing directly to that, and are very much also empowered with a sense of innate risk. There is risk in everything that we do. Every time we choose something, there's a pros and cons, and sometimes the cons outweigh the pros. And that built-in risk is an aspect of what we do within the UTO. We cannot develop for tomorrow, much less tomorrow's future, unless we're willing to lean into that. And I always draw from the broader understanding that the recognition of number one in innovation, as fancy as that recognition is, really speaks to our hunger within ASU and our desire to very much look at how do we then, again, through innovation today, transforms tomorrow and enable tomorrow's future.
I don't really know anything to add. I kind of already touched all this. Let people who are passionate lead. I want that one moved up to the top bullet point. Other than that, I think that's it.
Okay, Chris, noted. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. You have given us a lot to think about as we are breaking into and deciding which breakout room we want to go to. So let us see here. Ah, yes, time for some fun. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And hopefully, Victoria, would you mind sharing our breakout room document if you haven't already? I see the chat is blowing up, which I love to see. Pick your room. And Seth, will you help us get into breakout room roulette? Have a little fun? We have about 25 minutes. Somehow we are right on time. I'm very impressed. And yeah, I guess Seth, take it away. Thank you, everyone.
Here either.
Good. I'm so glad. Seven, 6, 5. They're almost back. Yay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hi, Jenny. So nice to see your face. Welcome back. I'm so excited to hear report outs and hear all about your discussions. Just going to give everybody a couple more minutes. Well, maybe not. I think this might be it. Okay, excellent. I'm going to share my screen just so we have a nice, actually, maybe I won't. This is our slide. We're having a discussion and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see who's doing the report outs. Barnaby, who's up first from your group?
Well, we selected voluntold. No, she actually agreed. Lisa King.
Awesome. Lisa, take it away.
Hi. We mostly concentrated on the first slide about the why. And since that's my wheelhouse, I guess I spoke too much. So
Not
here
at all.
I am. Basically, it's classic business analysis techniques that should be done early on to define the right problem or solution or opportunity that you're trying to get to. You need to know your current state first. You need to engage your stakeholders and know what stakeholders to engage. Design thinking was brought up, which is very important to be able to empathize with your users or your stakeholders. and doing all those processes. And we talked about the unintended consequences are how you need to think beyond your initiative or your project to try to envision what the unintended consequences might be. Obviously, you're not going to know all of them, but if you think about it, it might help. So I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And I remind everyone, use your last page within your draft board to take key takeaways and action items that you hear shared that you feel that we need to, as a community of practice, move forward.
As well, if anyone goes out and uses any of this in practice, we have a responsible innovation Slack channel. We'd love to hear what you apply it to. So keep sharing that back to our guild and feel free to join as well. So
Yes, please join us. We'll do a plug at the end, but please join us. All right, group 2.
I will report out on behalf of our group. I'm Jason Bronowitz. I'm not part of UTO. I'm an engineering faculty member, so thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Of course. So our group focused on being human-centered, and Michelle facilitated, and it was also Sophie Jones and Danielle Steele were there. We looked at what does it really mean to kind of start with empathy, and being able to see that no matter what our stakeholder groups are, whether we're in the experience center, whether we're whatever aspect of the university we're at, how we can consider what we're doing and how the other person on the end will receive that. Being able to see how can we be most prepared, things like the knowledge bases that UTO has when somebody picks up the phone and calls, how we can get the rest of the university to be in that mindset of let's actually update our stakeholders when we make changes that have significant impacts. How do we kind of build that into the process where we notify stakeholders? We looked at, again, the input that we have for getting feedback when that's things like actually going out and talking to our end users, talking to our customers, but being able to really listen. It's always easy. And I shared that I'm a rabbi and chaplain. And one of the things that I had the most, that I struggled with the most in pastoral counseling was being able to, I knew what I wanted to say next. And we talked about how easy it is for a tech issue. Like we know what we want to do to solve the problem, but often it's hard for us to put that aside and actually just listen first, see what the issue is that the person on the other end is bringing up and how we can use that to empathize and react in an appropriate way. We talked about not making assumptions. So one of the things that Sophie brought up was being able to never assume physical capacity or what the kind of if someone's using a walking stick, things like that, and being able to just have that empathy to say, if we're giving directions to something on campus or things like being aware of accessible parking spaces. So we talked about how we can maybe crowdsource that information. So instead of just being limited to the one person and stuck in their mind, how we can share that information across the board. And maybe it's like developing something like Waze for campus where we can then say, okay, here's in terms of accessibility issues on campus, here's what you can kind of anyone can contribute. And again, really being able to come back at the end of the day that this is about understanding who our customers are. I advocate for adding something about students to the charter and being human-centered. At the end of the day, that's what ASU is kind of here for. And even at the expense of us, the faculty and staff, we want to say keeping the students in mind as another layer to that.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, group 2. What great points. Some things for us to keep in mind as we continue to edit our charter. Amazing. We are so happy you're here from outside of UTO. That is our goal. We're so happy that you could join us today. Allison, who's speaking from group 3?
I actually dropped the ball on naming a facilitator, so I'm gonna take that so that I'm not throwing Kate under the bus.
Awesome. Okay.
Of like, surprise, you're presenting. So this was a lovely like PTSD cleansing moment for all of us in our room of like projects where we've brought in voices. Maybe things have gone great, maybe things have gone awry. and what we've learned from that. And so some of our highlights were the importance of product managers, product owners, whoever that core facilitator is that is bringing everyone connecting those voices together and ensuring everyone stays updated and making sure that all those voices are heard. You know, so often that role can just be tagged on to another position, but like that work is really hard and continuous. And so that's having someone in that position explicitly is so important to ensuring all those voices are heard. The other piece was, okay, how do we, what's too many voices, and is there such a thing as too many voices? We've all had times when it's like, oh, I just, and in Chris's example, I was one of those voices where it's like, I wish that voice would just go away because they're making this much harder. But those are often the voices that, you know, are bringing up those responsible elements or just those pieces that we don't hear. So we come up with some strategies that will add to the doc of how to, you know, honor those voices at the table and still keep forward momentum so that, you know, the project can continue forth and keep going on. And the importance of that in the design thinking process as a whole. And then our third piece was, our third core element was what you do with all that once you have it and how you can refine all that feedback down and take what is valuable and maybe leave what is not. And that's okay. Not everything has to be a battle. You know, it's about bringing the voices to the table. So we'll add, we've got lots of links of resources and tangible things that we'll add to the doc.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. That's powerful. Thank you so much. All right, group 4.
I'm back.
Oh, Chris, welcome back.
So I get to talk about group 4, the looking backwards and forwards. A couple of things really stood out. Lessons learned is something that a number of us would like to see reincorporated and actually be useful and used. I know that we have and other organizations in the past have tried to do something with that, to be able to go back and look at past either similar products or technologies and what could we have done better before we start on this next one. Some of that discussion centered around, you know, where would we place this repository and how would we get that to work? So I definitely see future discussions around that. How do you incorporate current projects into your vision of the future? I think Allison took care of some of that, you know, some of these overlap a little bit, right? Making sure all the voices are heard so we know what we're thinking is our future is going to be like. I hate the word anticipation, but it's definitely something we want to try to anticipate what that might look like. But at the same time, that's a guarded part. The looking backwards and forwards, we need to make sure that we're not anticipating things that will block future development. So we need to be less prescriptive on the ways that we develop things so that they have that scalability and that future proofing. Feedback loop. I think that was another big one, is we don't do that enough. I know there's been a number of conversations over the years of how to incorporate that more. I know Kat has tried a few things with my ASU that we want to see so we can get that feedback from the users of our products. We're doing that right now. A great example, I'm working on the digital portfolio thing, and we have the survey from the users of our last product that they're using right now to be able to go, what did we like? What did we not like? And I'd like to see more of that in the future. That's it.
Thank you. Amazing, amazing. All right, group 5, Jenny.
All right, thank you, Karina. We had a great conversation in group 5, and frankly, it would be fun to get that same group together over lunch and tease some of this out a little bit more. But the takeaways that we had, they were many. One was lead by example. You know, we all want that leader who is in the fray with us and who we know will have our back and will encourage us and push us out there to make things happen. We assume and encourage the best in each other. Direct from the charter is a very key element of this watering the grassroots, and we wanted to put that out there as one of our top topics. We had an example, Kathy was in my group and shared an example of when somebody came to her and said, hey, we want to implement CAPTCHA. What is this going to do to the stakeholders? You know, what do we need to do to make sure this works? And she reached out and got the resources for them to help them understand what needed to be done and to get changes made to the platform that they were going to use. So that was a key thing. When somebody initiates or reaches out, bring the resources to help them. And I see that Chris put something in the chat about making letting the team run with their ideas and making sure that you will support them with that. Going back to that assuming and encouraging the best in each other, absolutely key. How can we encourage colleagues to strive for excellence? One way is telling the stories of success, making sure that when people succeed, that we make a big deal about it. We get out there and cheerlead for people. And then especially when you've done something that makes things better for somebody, there's no bigger shot in the arm than hearing directly from that somebody that you made something better for. So that direct customer feedback, the Slack celebration channel, we talked about that, and it's super cool, and it's great to have those pats on the back and things, but knowing from somebody that you made a difference for, what that difference meant to them. In the case of people who couldn't use Duo because of limited mobility, getting tokens and actually being able to use Duo then and being able to get access to all those resources that they couldn't before. If you're somebody who helped them do that, then hearing from them that you did is just, it puts you on a high for the rest of the week. So those were our key takeaways, and thanks for the time. And thanks again to everybody who joined the group. Really appreciated seeing you there.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. This has been so wonderful and such an honor. We have just a couple more minutes. Somehow we are right on time. I'm shocked. But Barnaby is going to take it home for us. And I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to, hold on, I'm going to get the right slide, and then Barnaby is going to take it away.
And Karina, there's no shock. This has been carefully planned and structured, and thank you for all of your leadership and effort to make this a success, both the larger framework as well as the delivery on time. So
amazing. Thank you to everyone
kudos.
involved. Thank you. Major, but thank you.
Goals and takeaways. As Chris had talked about at the beginning, ensuring that we had an opportunity to be able to look at that charter and to be able to pull out principles to guide the larger practices inside the UTO as well as the university. It was also to look at then how do we bring and apply those within some examples. Chris Deaton had shared some examples within each of your breakout sessions. You had an opportunity to be able to explore that further. There is a community practice that I'm going to still deliver that punchline. We want you to join so that both your own efforts, your own successes, your own challenges, you're able then to share with others that will recognize your work, your effort, and more importantly, watch your blind side and say, I can help you with this, or I can help drive this forward, or what can I do that this approach might be useful. Again, we're starting up a new, larger awareness in this practice. Then to look at ways that we can encourage to draft plans and how to incorporate those principles into what we're doing in our initiatives. How is that reflected within, say, a business analysis plan? How is it that we work that into our larger outcomes? How do we reflect that into the delivery of the next application, the next system, the next workflow? How do we empower each other? Even the UTO 2.1, that whole larger organizational process changed can very much benefit and improve within this type of engagement. And the last is to look at what our next steps are. What is that focus? What is the scope? How do we move this forward? This is meant to be more than just a thank you so much for being here. Here's your micro badge or paper certificate. But this is an opportunity for you to, again, recognize there are many others that are traveling similar paths and have that reflected again in our broader efforts, our next year's strategic goals, the steps that we take in the next time that we're looking to say, this is a new project. then start asking those questions, the why, who's involved. Well, have we thought about all the broader aspects and the not thought of aspects that needs a little bit more reflection? Have we brought in people that have their voices empowered and are able to contribute and have that recognition beyond just we had a focus group at the beginning, now we're going to go ahead and work our way through to deliver. Again, within our agile process, within our agile mindset, we take small bites, we deliver back, we look to see what the feedback is to inform our next step, to then either adjust the scope, to adjust the people involved, to adjust the funding that might take place, and sometimes to say the risk outweighs the further work, and so we need to then reevaluate. Those are the takeaways. Within your draft boards, that last page of keynotes and takeaways, or if there's not one, please add them too. Let us know what your thoughts are. What action items did you just hear that you think that needs to be followed up? We need to make certain that that's not forgotten. And thank you. Thank you all for the 90 minutes you spent with us. And again, we hope it's the beginning of a much larger conversation. There is a wonderful community of practice in our Slack channel. There is an upcoming website. You've got now links to some of these original documents. There's more to be had. There's lots to explore. And we're all involved in disruptive technologies. That's what's fun about it. We get to build tomorrow's future through today's innovations.
Oh, thank you, Barnaby. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the planning team. Thank you just to everybody so much. We hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.